Hello and welcome to week 6 of the History 122 announcements. So this is our final week of class. So keep in mind, as I talked about in the last announcements, in that we have only 3 days of class, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and then you've got the final exam on Thursday. So do keep that in mind. Remember, as I mentioned last time, I did include 2 lists of old terms. The lists are the same. The presentation is different. One is they're in alphabetical order. The other is they're just in order that we were presented in class. And one thing that might help as you're preparing for the final exam, because a lot will be focused on those old terms, is to go through and actually copy and paste from your old study guides into the new ones the terms. In that way, they'll be nice and organized. You don't have to do that. It's just something you can do. And I think that will make it easier. So the writing assignment for last week, I thought people generally did well. I did not think that was easy reading by any chance, but people did generally well in the old assignments. The new assignments are quite a bit easier. Now, when you first download these, you may say, wow, these are fairly long. They're long because they're comics, right? They're Japanese comics, what are called manga. And the first of these is a one by this guy, Shigeru Mizuki. Now, Shigeru Mizuki, and one thing I want to note, when you read his comic, it reads right to left. So if you're reading one about a soldier and it's really confusing, remember, it reads right to left, not left to right. It reads right to left. So it's the opposite. Japanese traditionally read from right to left, whereas in the West we read left to right. But just so you know, that will make things a little bit easier. And you'll see this with the page numbers too, as you read through the comic. So one reason I want people to kind of get a sense of the Japanese perspective on World War II, because the information we're looking at focuses on a Western perspective, particularly an American perspective. And Shigeru Mizuki actually fought on the Japanese side during World War II. His left arm was actually blown off essentially by an American bomber. So fortunately, his right arm was still okay, and he was right-handed, so he could become a manga artist later on. But I mean, if you want to see a Japanese perspective, I think looking at the perspective of a Japanese soldier who actually fought in the war is interesting, especially when it's in comic book form. The second comic is a dramatization of the actual experience of someone who lived through the atomic bombing of Hiroshima. Now, it is dramatized. It's made a little bit melodramatic in particular, but the essential description is correct. And I want to stress, again, this comic is being drawn by someone who lived through the atomic bombing of Hiroshima. So I just wanted to kind of get that balance. A lot of what we're looking at so far was from the American perspective. I wanted to show a couple of Japanese perspectives, and in particular, these are Japanese perspectives of Japanese people who were not like high officials who were making decisions. These were just civilians, and the Shigeru Mizuki, he was like a private. He wasn't a high-ranking soldier. So the one other thing to note is I have given you your pre-final grade. You can look on Blackboard and see what your letter grade is currently. If you're trying to figure out where you're at, like what kind of grade you would need, well, remember I grade on a point system. There are currently 295 points left. There's the password for this week, that's 5 points. The writing assignment 6, that's 25 points. And the final exam, which is worth 265 points. So keep that in mind. I'm sorry. The final exam is worth 260 points. So that means there's 290 points left. So you've got 290 points left. Like I said, 5 is from the password, 25 is from writing assignment 6, 260 from the final exam. So there's 290 points left. Now, if you look in Blackboard, it will give you your total points on the far left. So let's say you had 550 points going into the final exam. Getting a C would require that you get at least 150 points, because you need 700 points to get a C. That's relatively easy, right? And if you're content with the C, which I wouldn't be content with, but if you are, you're in pretty good shape. To get a B, though, you would need to get at least 250 points, right? To get a B, you would need to get at least 250 points. 290 points, possible. Getting a B is not impossible, but you're going to want to work really, really hard to get that B. And I do want to remind people of my grade appeal policy, right? If you want to appeal your grade, that has to be done in writing but requests for individual bonus assignments, the reopening of old Blackboard quizzes, or change of grade based on such reasons as a need for a certain GPA to maintain a scholarship are unjust to other students and will therefore be rejected. There have been multiple bonus assignments that I have given this class. If you did them, great. If you didn't, that was your decision not to do them. And, at a certain point, we just have to stop. So just keep that in mind. And generally, one thing I want to stress is, this is a cumulative final exam. And so when someone is like on the bubble between, like a C or a B or something like that, the thing I ask myself is, how did the person do on the final exam? It's a cumulative final exam. So if someone would normally have a high C but gets a B on the final exam, I would say, well, geez, that student really learned their stuff. It makes sense for me to bump them up to a B. On the other hand, a student who has a C, let's say you have a student who has a D going into the final exam and fails the final exam, why would I bump them up to a C, right? It doesn't make sense. So just keep that in mind, right? I'm much more willing to bump people up if they do very well in the final exam. And it doesn't make sense to me to, like I say, bump up someone when they got lower on the final exam. So the final exam, it is meant to be easy if you've been keeping up. The focus is on these, a lot of it's on just simple identification of terms, of names. That's what the cumulative part will focus on, as well as the material from week 6. So keep that in mind. You'll have 65 minutes to complete the final exam, since there are 65 questions. So make sure you give yourself plenty of time. Make sure you're well rested, that you're reviewed. It's great if you have that dual monitor or second screen set up. If you don't, print out your notes, and that will make things a lot easier. So a few things about the upcoming videos. We're going to finish the Victory in the Pacific video, so that will continue on. There is another video called The Millionaire, and I think it's hilarious. It is a Soviet Union cartoon making fun of the United States. So when they talk about a story that happened somewhere, they're talking about the United States. There was this really weird rule in the Cold War that you could criticize each other, but you could never say exactly who you were criticizing, even though it was obvious who you were criticizing. You could never actually say it, though. But in any case, it's a hilarious cartoon, and it shows how the Soviet Union viewed the United States. So I hope you'll enjoy that. World history can be really depressing. And so one of the documentaries I've chosen is called People Century, People Power. It's another People Century video, so you're kind of familiar with those. And while it has some sad parts, it's generally happy because it talks about the collapse of communism in Eastern Europe and how people are kind of groping and searching for freedom, which I think is wonderful. And a lot of these people, they get the freedom they want. So it is, in the end, while there's some human suffering there is ultimately human triumph, right? That people who were unfree now enjoy a lot of freedom. The password for this week is jeans. When you watch my lecture on communism, you understand why I chose jeans as the password. Jeans have a very interesting history in terms of communism in Europe, and communist policy towards jeans, I think, is one reason why they failed, why communism failed in Eastern Europe. You'll see what I mean when you watch the video. So don't forget to send me that password by 11:59 p.m. on Tuesday. The password, of course, being jeans. Remember that to check that schedule, because the writing assignment is due on Wednesday. The final exam is due on Thursday. So this week is a short week. So meaning that you don't have as much time as perhaps as I would like, but that's just how the schedule is set up, and I have to follow it. So good luck, and let me know if you have any questions.